Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. I have a special guest today, Kristina McPherson from Toronto. She is originally from Jamaica, as I mentioned earlier, and she is a real expert on the topic of moving to Canada and how to be happy there. This is actually an aspect that we didn't include in the title, but it I think, will be part of the discussion or part of her tips, because it's not just about the technical side. It's actually also about getting your, setting your life up in a way that you'll actually be able to enjoy it and not just be there. And it's for everyone who has moved country already. You are probably aware that can quickly happen, that you have like all the dreams and it's great and you're moving, and then once you're there, you see it's not the paradise. It's a country like any other, and some problems have traveled with you and so on. This of course can happen with Canada as well, so we'll see how to handle that, and I'm sure that Kristina will be the perfect speaker on that to help everyone who is thinking about it, how to prepare yourself the best in order to have a great start and a great life later in Canada. So yes, over to you, I would say, Kristina. Please introduce yourself a little further, and then we'll start with the show.
All right. Hi, everybody. Good day. Thank you for being on here today. My name is Kristina. I'm from Jamaica, as Michael said, and I've been living in Canada. Next year, we'll make 9 years in Canada. I came as a student and then followed a progression into Canadian citizenship. And so I'm a full-fledged Canadian citizen right now. And I'm excited to share my journey with you and my story with you and whatever tips and advice I have on living in Canada.
And actually, do you still have your Jamaican citizenship as well, or did you give it up? Okay,
I do. So you can hold dual citizenship as a Jamaican citizen. Okay. So I have both.
That's practical. Yes.
Yeah.
So why did you choose Canada at that time?
I had just finished university. I studied architecture at a university in Jamaica, and I didn't feel very hopeful in my job prospects or earning potential coming out of university. And a friend had mentioned it to me at the end of university, probably the last 4 months of university. Hey, what about Canada? Because as you can see right now, Canada is there's more promotion as to come to Canada, but it's always been a thing, right? Migrating to Canada. And even now it's a lot more easy. But yeah, a friend brought it to me. We met with an immigration consultant, and he kind of just laid out what was possible for us. And I had one relative in Canada, and she was very instrumental in making it possible, because then I would have somewhere to live. I'm not going into no man's land knowing nobody. So she was very encouraging and helped it, and my parents were helpful, and it happened. It happened. I just felt like I had more opportunities and more financial mobility in Canada than in my home country, Jamaica, and I took the opportunity.
But did you check out any other country as well?
I didn't. I feel like for a while I had always been interested in North America, but more particularly Canada. Canada seemed a little bit more attractive, and the progression into being a permanent resident there seemed it felt more feasible in Canada. And then just Canada is known kind of to just be a little bit more safe and friendly. From my knowledge, I'm not saying that that's true or not true, but from my knowledge, compared to the two North American countries, which is the United States or Canada was just a more attractive option as family oriented or safe, but I also just had my aunt there. That I have relatives in the US, but Canada was just more attractive to me than the United States.
Okay, good. And it's also not that far away from Jamaica, so it's not that difficult to go home, right?
No, it's a 4-hour flight.
Yeah, so that's doable, and it's not like 12 hours or 18 hours or whatever you can have in the world. So understandable. Okay. Have you ever credited? Was there a moment where you thought it was, oh my God, what have I done?
Oh my God, what have I done has definitely been a thought. Definitely. Especially like, I think in my first year, when you're not from a country, when you're from the tropics and you go to a country that is the North Pole, that is cold, that deals with snow, it's different. And I came in the dead of winter. So from the one day to the next, it was summer.
Yeah.
And it was an ice storm when I came,
okay.
right? I'd never experienced snow. And so my mind was always on the prize. Like, I'm going there, I'm on a mission. But when you're at the bus stop and it's minus 22 degrees and the bus is late, I'm like, what have I done? Right? But in terms of, so of course, like those questions come into play.
Yes.
In terms of regretting it, no, never. I've never regretted the decision to come here or being here or the decision to still be here, right? I think everywhere, no matter where you are, there's pros and there's cons. It's not all rainbows and skittles here, but the long-term value for my family, for my child, for myself is there. And so I never take a day back, but I would have less winter. Like if like right now I have the opportunity to like go to somewhere warm because I have a passport in the winter, like I'll do that to not have to necessarily deal with the winter. If you're not used to it, if you're used to it, then yeah.
Okay, good. Do you remember in terms of this kind of topic, do you remember the worst moment in terms of where you, maybe you did, okay, maybe you weren't thinking about, this was all wrong, but like, was there like a really low point in the whole process?
There was, well, for starters, every immigration process, because you go from a student to a worker and then you're working for a little while and then you have to wait for a little while before you can be a citizen. But every application, it was like nerve-wracking because you don't know if it's going to be rejected and you have to go home, or there's fear around even like once you get out of school, getting a job. But my lowest point was, I think I had just become a permanent resident and my grandfather in Jamaica got ill. And this is the thing, like for me, though I'm here I by that point, I was living on my own. And though there's family, a few family about, you've left your core family back in your home country, right? My grandfather was sick. I was pretty close to my grandfather. And I went to visit thinking that, okay, I'm here. I get to see him a couple of days. But then I started to question, like, should I really be in Canada right now? Should I really be away from my family right now? Like anything can happen to anybody. So I went to visit a couple of days for him. It didn't feel like enough days, but I had to get back to my job. And by the next week, he passed away. So that was difficult for me in like saying like, why am I here? Do I really need to be here? Who else? Who's next? Like who am I going to be missing out on next? That really, really challenged my decision at the time. Ultimately, I had to kind of think about the long-term value and then try to just make the best of every visit. I would visit twice a year or different things, but that was definitely the most challenging part for me. And the only point where I really, really questioned, like, why am I here?
But it stayed with it, or was this repeated, this kind of experience, or was it like, okay, one time?
During the mourning period, like while I'm mourning the loss of my grandfather, I had to mourn alone too, which was just kind of hard to do. Like I don't really have family like that here, so that was kind of tricky. But then once I went to Jamaica, attended the funeral, came back. I did some drastic things. I sold my car. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going back to Canada. I got rid of anything that was like not easy to manage. But then once I got back into the root of things. I realigned with my goals because yes, I'm a permanent resident now, but I'm after citizenship, and no matter what, I know that I can just do the best I can with spending time with family. And then I have to move on, kind of a thing, like my grandfather, he lived a full life. He was 90.
Oh, that's great.
So, yeah. So no, it lasted while I was mourning, and then I had to pick myself up and carry on, and it never really happened again. Thank God nobody's passed away.
So it never became a danger to the project.
It never became a danger to the project. No.
Okay, good. Okay, excellent. So, well, then you mentioned already why you got interested, well, you in person got interested in Canada. On the more general side, what would you say are the main pros and some cons, speaking for and against choosing Canada?
I'm going to start with the cons first so that we end on a positive note,
Excellent.
So the cost of living in Canada is considerably high. I'm of course going to compare it to where I know, which is Jamaica. But also even other parts of Canada. There are parts of Canada where it's not as expensive, but in the more known and more populated areas where the opportunities are, Toronto, Vancouver, the big major cities, cost of living, especially housing, especially right now, is pretty high. So it makes it feel like home ownership is a little bit out of reach. And if it's not out of reach, it's a burden if you do get it, right? And now with the state of the economy and pending recession, interest rates are going up. So it's the housing especially is expensive. And then that kind of the cost of living trickles down into everything, right? The cost of fuel and then the cost of your groceries and different things. So it's pretty high compared to what a standard or a single person would earn. Then it's like I did mention the weather, and that's the biggest thing that has made me question some of me being here, because when I just came, I was on a mission. It didn't matter to me. Like my commute to school at the time was 2 hours one way.
No.
And I had to take the bus. I took 3 different buses, right? And so I knew I was on a mission and it didn't bother me, right? So the weather, the minus 22 days bothered me, but generally it didn't bother me. But as the mission was complete and I became a citizen, I visited Jamaica for a little while during the pandemic. When I came back, I was a different me. And I didn't like the winter. I didn't like it. I came and then the next week there was this big snowfall. My car was buried in snow and I wasn't very happy about that. So depending on where you're from, I think the weather could take its toll on you. My mom, who had never experienced winter ever, came with me in January and it affected her. Like she wasn't prepared for being locked up inside. COVID plus winter. It means like you don't really want to go outside. Plus you can't really interact with people anyway. So the weather has its deterrents. The winter blues, it's a thing. It's real. So there's that. And I think that generally, like if you have migrated, you've left your family behind. So you're having to rebuild that core. And me now I'm in a different stage of life where I have a 2-year-old, right? When you have children, having family support, I think is a big benefit. And when you've left your country, you don't necessarily have that anymore. So that's definitely something that to be considered. And with regards to the cost of living, we're taxed. The taxes are high in terms of your income tax. And everything, all the goods that you purchase have tax on it, right? So it adds up. But to switch over now to the pros, though we are heavily taxed, we have a lot of social benefits and government benefits like healthcare. Our healthcare system is free. So basic level healthcare is free. I had a baby. I got 1 year paid maternity leave. And I don't know if there's any moms on here or any people who have young kids or is in a country where maternity leave is 3 months or 3 weeks or whatever, like 1 year paid. The pay is 55% of your pay, but it's still like you're paid, right? It's still, for me, I was fine. And 1 year is a minimum. You can get up to 18 months paid maternity leave, right? And I think that's a big deal for like just mental health in general, even. So though the cost of living is high or the tax is high, we get those benefits, right? There's childcare benefits that you get depending on your family situation and how many children you have. And I think just generally the quality of living, depending on where you're from, if I am to compare it to Jamaica, ease of access to things, anything you want, anything you need is available here quickly, easily, 2 days shipping. So that's nice. And the quality of like infrastructure, like communities, centers, outdoor parks for kids, indoor swimming pools, different things that I think add to just how the quality of your days or your life and stuff like that. And just like my reason for leaving Jamaica, just greater financial mobility. I was working for a little while I was in Jamaica, and what I was making for the month in Jamaica, I came to Canada and I was making that a week, right? So like in Jamaica, I wouldn't be able to, if I was living on that income. Living is hard. It becomes a little bit tricky. And I'm not saying that that's the case for everybody. It depends on where you're starting at in terms of professional, but definitely the cost of or what your opportunities to earn are greater here. And I've seen that, and I'm comfortable with that. So the pros and cons kind of outweigh themselves. Is the grass greener? Maybe not. It's other grass. But yeah, those are my pros.
What about the people?
Canadians are
Yes.
very friendly people. Sometimes it's not necessarily genuine, but for the most part, I find the society very friendly and orderly. So like if you're at a stoplight and the lights are not working, there's no chaos. Compared to in Jamaica, it would be a gridlock. You can't move. Everybody's trying to get through. But in Canada, what I've seen, this light stop working and they treat it like an all-way stop sign, 4-way stop sign. So you get to the front of the line, whoever gets there first, you go, then you go, then you go. And then they just treat it like a stop sign. So there's a lot of order. Maybe downtown Toronto might be a little bit mixed, but generally there's more order and friendly and helpful. They're always saying sorry. That's a thing. Sorry, that they say Canadians do. But I think the people are pretty accommodative and helpful. But so it depends on where in Canada you are. I'm in Toronto. It's the most multicultural. So there's everybody here. Everybody from every country is here. In more remote parts, it might be predominantly Caucasian. So I've not experienced that. So I can't necessarily speak for that. But where it's multicultural, then I find that.
So after arriving, you didn't have a problem making friends and socializing and stuff like that?
I think the benefit to having come here as a student is different from just landing here and just trying to figure it out. So you come here, the school environment is helpful for making friends because you're stuck with these people for the next 8 months anyway. You can't help but make friends. And so that was kind of like my introduction into Canada, to school. So I had friends. Once I left school and I was in the work environment, it became a little bit more, I had to be a lot more intentional about meeting people and meeting friends. A lot of the friends became my co-workers because I was able to get a job right out of school. But outside of that, it was a lot of friendships kind of grew from networking through LinkedIn. Like I have a friend in Canada, that's my oldest friend in Canada that I met just like you on LinkedIn. He reached out to me and he's been like a mentor and a friend for the longest while. So it kind of just happened like that. But I think that if you're not necessarily an outgoing person or not necessarily outgoing, but if you're not intentional about it, it's easy to kind of be a little bit lonely for a while. And then your friends are just the people you see every day at work.
Okay. By the way, InterNations is a good platform if you arrive to, get among people who are like-minded people and meet people and so on. So on, especially in the bigger cities, not only in Canada, but certainly also Toronto. There's stuff going on. Check that out. And because this is particularly easy, even if you don't know a single person, you can always go to these events because this is the idea that if you just arrive, you can easily meet people. You don't have to explain why you go there or, what you're doing. This is the idea is to actually mix and mingle and meet people. And then you'll figure out, who you want to stay in touch with and who not. So this is, I think, a good way for everyone who doesn't have the comfort of being in an environment right away that provides some good social encounters. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Shall we quickly give our audience the chance to ask a question or maybe also share some experience on these pros and cons that Kristina has mentioned. So anyone who wants to ask a question or share your own experience
I
with
would like
it?
to share my experiences.
Go ahead.
I'm Leyla. I'm originally from Turkey. I have been living in Germany for 20 years. I came to Germany, I studied, I did my PhD, now I am working. And then 3 years ago, I went to Canada, or 5 years ago, I went to Canada to work there for 3 years at the university for 2 years. From 2017 to 2019, I worked there at the university in Guelph, close to Toronto.
Okay.
As a postdoc. And I came back to Germany. And then I compare my life in Germany and in Canada. And then I realized what I am losing in Germany, what kind of life. And then I decided to go back to Canada, to immigrate to Canada.
So,
as you said, it is very cold, extreme snow. 9 months of the year is cold. But this standard life there is a luxury for us in Germany. Where I stayed it's in a house. I just rented a room and I had my own bathroom in the room. We had a jacuzzi in the garden and a fireplace in the house. And then how we live here is 20 square rooms, sharing the bathroom with many people. No garden at all. Like I was on the top when I came to Germany in the bottom. I was feeling like that. I left a luxury life there, and in here what I have is nothing. And I decided to immigrate to Canada. I applied for a permanent residence. And then I got an invitation under the classification experienced worker because I worked there for 2 years. But I sent all documents. This was during the Corona time. And they realized when I got the invitation, I was their experienced worker. When I submitted all my documents, they realized it is 1 month late. So now I am not anymore classified for the experienced worker and they rejected it. I mean, something like that would happen nobody. And I contacted some consultants and they told me nobody is aware of such kind of rules. I was really disappointed by Canada. As you said, if you compare the Canada to other countries, Western countries, they are very friendly and foreigners are welcome in Canada. I have this feeling. I developed this. Like I wasn't treated like a foreigner. I was welcome there. It is different in Germany. You cannot. You are always a foreigner. Even I have been living here for 20 years, working, paying my tax, full-time positions. Still, I cannot get my residence, permanent residence here. 20 years, no permanent residence, and I am a full taxpayer. I had very bad experiences in Germany when I compare to Canada. Okay, move to Canada, but it's not working. It's not easy to get a PR in Canada. I am highly educated. I have work experiences, but still it's not enough for Canada to get a PR. Therefore, you are very lucky how you do it, how you did it, how to manage to get your PR. And the disadvantage of Canada is you can when apply for a job in any company, you cannot get it because you are not Canadian, because you don't have a Canadian PR. This is a hindrance for us to immigrate, to go there. I cannot find a job from here because I am not on the country. I don't have a PR. But I was also registered in the job bank in Canada. About 96% of jobs are asking for your PR. If you don't have it, they ignore your application. Like in the last 3 years, I have been living like, okay, I am just permanent in Germany. I want to move to Canada. Therefore, like I was living like on the mood. I'm moving. I cannot buy anything because I cannot take everything with me to Canada. But it didn't work. And I'm really disappointed. Okay. And then finally, I gave up my old hopes and dreams and my goals about Canada.
You want to, is this a good moment to comment on it, Kristina? Or do you want to maybe bring up the this rather sad experience later when we talk about the more technical details? I don't know. I would leave it up to you how you would want to handle it.
I think as we go along, that there are a couple of questions there will be answered. Her situation is very specific because she's already applied and she got rejected. Let me address part of it right now. I'll just a part of it right now, and then when we go on, probably a little bit of information will be repeated, but I'm going to start with the job thing, right? Because recently on my YouTube channel, I've done 2 videos on how to find a job in Atlantic Canada. Now, I've chosen Atlantic Canada specifically because there is an immigration program that allows people to come there via an employer. So you have a job first, then you come to Canada and work, and then you get PR. Not when you're using the job bank. There are jobs that are highlighted as Canadian citizens and permanent residents only, or Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and international applicants welcomed, right? So the type of jobs that you're looking for could very much be the cog in the wheel, because for a Canadian employer to hire anybody internationally, unless they've already proven to the government that they cannot fill the position locally, there's a lot of work that is involved in hiring somebody internationally. Because what they basically have to say to the government is, government, we have this job position. We've put out job postings. Nobody in Canada is qualified for this job. So therefore, we have to get somebody outside of Canada. And as you can imagine, for an employer, I tried it. I tried LMIA. That's called Labor Market Impact Assessment. My first option was that when I was in Canada trying to become a permanent resident. And I started the process with my employer. It's very intrusive into the employer's business. And it's hard unless you're like a specialized skill or you're in a remote area where there are no people. So therefore you need people to come. So that's for the job, just to touch on that, right? So the type of jobs you're applying to can go a long way in terms of being successful. The technicalities of her specific application, I feel like it would probably require a longer conversation to know why exactly they rejected you, because there's the Canadian experience class and then there's a federal skilled worker. And I think you probably could have qualified for both. So I feel like consulting with an immigration consultant.
I applied again as federal skilled worker. I am a nuclear physicist.
Say that again.
Now applied as a federal skilled worker. And my application is waiting on the desk. Even like my IELTS exam, English exam was expired. Mm-hmm. Last year, I redid it. Mm-hmm. And we were not upload to this on the immigration webpage because they didn't do it, and they rejected my application again because my English exam is expired. Also, I redid it. They didn't upload it. They didn't accept it. And then applied one more time. I think nowadays it is not easy to immigrate to Canada, even if you want, even if you are skilled. Therefore, only one option, what I see is like going to there as a student.
So for sure, that especially just getting into COVID and post-COVID, the technical requirements and the requirements to become eligible for Canadian permanent residence has increased. It is definitely not as easy as it was before COVID. Mm-hmm. Not only easy, there's also there's a lot of backlogs, and they kind of have to treat it like black and white, a computer system. If you have everything we need, then we'll proceed. If you don't, we have to dump your application, and then you guys kind of have to start over because of the influx or the high amount of applications in there. But I feel like maybe your situation might require like a one-on-one conversation just to try and to troubleshoot where things can be improved, maybe. Yeah, I think that's probably the best thing for your particular situation.
Okay, great, Kristina. I think this is a good moment of time to move on to and actually explain the overall process of immigrating and then later becoming a citizen. So if maybe you can help everyone to understand the basics here, and that this will also make it easier for everyone to understand the details you may be then mentioning later on this or that.
Okay, so I wish I could say basics, right? Because there is no one size fits all immigration program to come to Canada. Okay, there's a lot of immigration programs and a lot of things that depend on you and what you are eligible for. So your educational background matters, right? Somebody with a high school diploma versus somebody with a master's degree. Your work experience matters, whether you've been working for less than a year, 5 years, but also what kind of job. Are you a physiotherapist? I think some therapists of the sort. Are you a cashier? Are you a bookkeeper? That the level of job, the tier of job, all of that matters. Your age matters, right? Because they are trying to fill gaps in a aging population. So they're looking for the prime working age of people, right? Your family situation, like how many people are in your family, or if you have any family in Canada. There are a lot of things that kind of contribute to which program you are eligible for, but also your financial background, like how much money do you have in the bank to show Canada that you can come here and afford to live, right? So there is no one size fits all program. I'm going to tell you some of the more popular programs. So I think Leila had spoken about she applied through what's called the Express Entry. Now, Express Entry is a point-based system, right? So you get points for your age. So the prime age is 29 to 31 or 21 to 29 or 21 to 30, where you'll get the maximum amount of points for your age. So if you're between that age, you probably get 100 points. The older you get, the less points you have, right? Because you're moving closer and closer to retirement, right? So you get points for your age. You get points for your high school diploma or your master's degree. More points if you have a master's or a bachelor's versus high school. You get points for your work situation, like how long, where, what have you worked in. Now, once you have you put that information in, you get 450 points, let's say, hypothetically speaking. Now, when you kind of submit that information, you're kind of just in a pool with everybody who's interested. Well, everybody has points, they're swimming around in the pool. And twice a month, the government will say, okay, we want people who have 460 points and above who are a federal skilled worker. For a federal skilled worker is somebody who's been working in a skilled job field for X amount of years. So we want people who have 460 points and above. This program, come to Canada. And it's issue an invitation. And then you respond to that invitation saying, yes, I accept your invitation to apply for permanent residency, or you can also decline. I don't know anybody who's declined, but you say, yes, I accept your invitation. Then you put an application in for permanent residency. You don't come to Canada and just become a citizen. Nobody, unless you're born here, you don't become a citizen. You become a permanent resident first. You do your time, which is about 3 years, depending on if you travel, but 3 to 5 years. And then you apply for citizenship after. So that's the Express Entry program. Now there's different tiers, different types of categories under which you can be eligible, but that's just the base level. You get the points, the more points you have, the better off you are.
So this would mean that you basically you apply, hopefully you'll have a lot of points, then the chance to get accepted soon is higher. But you do not need to have a job. You do not need to have found an employer in this scheme, right?
No, correct.
Yeah,
correct.
Okay, good.
It is more if you have found that job that is supported by a labor market impact assessment, then you get more points. So everything kind of just adds to the points. Now, there are things you can do to manipulate your points, right? You can go to school in Canada, you'll get more points. You can work in Canada, you'll get more points. And that's kind of why the school route is very popular, because it's kind of like a I want to say
point building method.
It's a point building exercise. We don't come to school and pay thousands of dollars because we feel like it, right? It's part of the mission, right? So that's what you can do to come and get more points and have more chances of success in that program. There are people that I know who have not gone to school and who have done the Express Entry program and have been successful. So it's not necessarily a requirement, but they just had enough points. They were working in the right job for the right length of time and the right age. Things worked out, right? And then Layla spoke about an English test. The English test can make or break your application, right? If you get, even if you're from an English-speaking country, everybody has to do an English test. It's more of like a skills assessment, like your listening skills, your comprehension skills, your writing skills, and your reading skills of the English language. If you get the maximum amount of points or score on your English test, you can get higher points on your Express Entry profile. If you do poorly on it, you can get small amount of points. So you do the test 5 million times to get the highest amount of scores, right? So that's one way. That's the Express Entry program.
And this is a special test that they have designed for this program, or what kind of test is that?
So it is a specific test that is used by immigration, but also schools will use it too, right? So it's internationally known. There are certain English test companies that are approved by immigration. So you can't just go take any old one. Like some of them are probably good for any college or whatever, but immigration will say you need to provide an English test from the IELTS or CELPIP, or it will tell you on the immigration website which English tests are approved and which type, because you have general and you have academic, right? So they just take the general one, not the academic level, because that's more for like school admissions and such, right? So it's specifically designed for school admissions, immigration, different things, and they'll tell you which ones.
Okay, good. We have a question. Sama, you want to ask your question?
Hi, Michael. Hi, Kristina.
Hi.
Okay, so I am 50-year-old. I have 20 years experience in IT. I did the IELTS 1 month ago. I got 7. I got my bachelor degree evaluated by WES. So, but the Express I don't think the Express works for me. I want to immigrate to Canada because all my family is abroad. So I don't have a point in returning to my country. I'm living in Dubai for the past 12 years. So what do you think I should do? What is the best strategy?
Well, it depends. So it sounds to me like you probably tried calculating your score and it's not enough.
Yeah, for the Express, for my age, it's not enough.
Okay. So the next program I'm going to talk about may answer your question. I'm going to stick a pin right there, and then I'm going to get to the next immigration programs. There is one more question if you want to go ahead and ask, so I can make sure that I cover it in the next thing that I said. But I'll answer your question, Samar, in the next part that I talk about. But Saul had a question.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hi. Yeah, I've got a similar question for this the fellow who asked earlier. I just wanted to know that is this for the point system, we call this the tier system, that is that the only, or is that the primary option or chance of applying for this, the Canadian citizenship or residency, or there are any other as well?
Right. Okay. So both your questions are similar. So the next part I'll answer I think will answer your question. So the Express Entry just happens to be, it is kind of the most popular because a lot of people just come to school in Canada and get it over with, right? Because it's more like guaranteed they just come to school. But I understand that at your age, you're not interested in going to school, and probably an immigration consultant wouldn't buy that either, right? So not immigration officer, sorry, the person reviewing the application. So the next program is one that I promote quite a bit, and I've been talking about it since 2019. It's called the Atlantic Immigration Program. So Atlantic Canada is Eastern Canada. So it's the four provinces in Eastern Canada that make up Atlantic Canada. So there's Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland and Labrador, and Prince Edward Island. So those are the 4 Atlantic provinces. Now, in Atlantic Canada, they have an aging population, and they have a program specifically to bring people to Atlantic Canada. And how they went about this program is like, employers in Atlantic Canada were able to prove to the government that, look, we are trying to hire for these positions and not enough people are applying, not enough qualified people are applying, or nobody's applying. So then the government said, okay, we will give you guys, you batch of employers who have proven this, authority or permission to hire people internationally. And so the whole program is based on that. So those employers who have proven that they can't fill positions locally are on a list called designated employers. If you go through like the lists, you find an employer who has a job posting available and apply. That is one way to migrate to Canada. So it starts by having a job from an employer who's on that list. You get the job, the employer does some paperwork in behind the scenes. You come to Canada on a work permit while your permanent residency application is being processed. And it could take a year for the permanent residency application to be processed, but you have a work permit, a valid work permit to work while that is happening. And then once you become a permanent resident, now you have mobility rights to go wherever you want, right? So you don't have to stay in Atlantic Canada. Not that I'm promoting that anybody leaves Atlantic Canada, but I'm saying that you come there through Atlantic Canada, you stay there until you have a permanent residency, and then you can move around if you need to or want to. So that's a program that I like it particularly for the fact that you're coming here with a job. I think that, later on, we'll probably talk a little bit about some of the things that people are blindsided by when they come to Canada. It's when you're coming through school, it's a little bit easier to get a job. Not that it's guaranteed or anything like that, but because you have Canadian experience, you've been able to network for the time that you were in Canada for, you can get a job a little bit easier than somebody who just comes here looking for a job. Whereas the Atlantic immigration program, you have a job before you come to Canada. And I like that, right? There's like secure employment for at least a year before you even get here. So that's definitely a program that's for an older person, that is something that is within your reach, but also something that doesn't entail going through the express entry program, right? So I think that answer is probably both relevant to Saul and Samir.
Yeah, my part is this Atlantic one. What are the requirements for that? And is that for all of the provinces or states, or only particular ones?
So that program, when you come, you can only go to four of the provinces in Canada, which are the Atlantic provinces. But when you come and you go to those 4 provinces, you only need to stay there for as long as your application is being processed. Once your application is approved and you are a permanent resident, as a permanent resident, you have mobility rights to live anywhere you want to in Canada. And then so that means that now you have access to all of Canada. But while you're doing your time, you're doing your tenure, you have to stay in Atlantic Canada and work for an Atlantic Canadian employer. So it could be a year, it could be a year, 2 years. Then you get the mobility rights to go wherever you want to go.
How do you know what time is allocated for this process? The Canadians tell, or what is who decides? Your process will take a year, 2 or 5, or what?
So it's going to be dependent on the processing time for permanent resident applications at that time, right? So right now, the processing time for permanent resident application, I think, is 1 year to 18 months. So once that processing time is done, you have a card that says you are now a permanent resident of Canada. That is what the timeline is based on. Now, of course, if you get into some sort of contract with the employer, now that could be different. But so whatever that contract length is, or the repercussions of terminating the contract early, once you have your permanent residency card, that's when the mobility rights open up for you. So that's another program that's available, and I quite like it. My channel right now is going to be focused on Atlantic Canada because I like the fact that you come here with a job. School is expensive. So
well, also there's a difference in the first case. Maybe someone asked if you could repeat the names of the programs, please.
Okay.
Maybe you can do this quickly. What was the first one called and the second one?
So the first program is Express Entry Program.
Okay, Express Entry Program. And the other one is Atlantic Canada.
The Atlantic Immigration Program.
Atlantic Immigration Program. Okay. Well, the good thing is that you are in the Express Program, you need to convince the government or the government agencies. Whereas in the second ones, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kristina, you basically have to convince your prospective employer, and then you don't have to worry about the immigration part anymore, because this has been sorted out before between the employer and the government. So in the difference is, the way I understand it is, with the Express Program, you need to focus on basically figuring out how the authorities function in terms of the program is set up and convincing them and so on. Whereas with the Atlantic Immigration one, it's about your employer. So this is industry specific. And if you probably are more familiar with your global industry, and so you can probably relate easier to the potential employer, to a potential employer in Canada than to some government executives or whatever, government officers that basically just check if you have like exact number of points that you need. So it's not the same, and it's not just different in terms of the order. It's also different in terms of the people you're dealing with or focusing on. So and therefore, it may be easier to relate to the whole situation looking for a job, because this is what you have to do anyway. And even if you get into Canada with the Express Program, you would still need to convince a Canadian employer to employ you. So this will be, you will have to do this anyway. So in a way, you could just do that without having to worry about the other aspect, rather than in the Express Program do the government part first and then still have to do the other part. So therefore, I absolutely agree that it may make things easier, not just because you may not have enough points, but also in terms of being able to overcome then the things that you find difficult to understand, relate to, etc. Am I right with that? Does it make sense, Kristina? You're the expert.
Yeah. Makes sense. The one thing is like, yes, you convince Express Entry, you are trying to convince the government authorities too, but it's also like it's a lot of the weights depends on your qualifications and your abilities and stuff like that, which sometimes you don't have any control over. Right?
Okay, so. Good. All right. So, do you want to move on with the basics? We also need to cover the becoming the citizen later aspect still.
Yeah. I did want to mention too that those are two programs, right? Like I said, like there are a number of programs. There's a rural and northern pilot program, and that will bring people to, similar to Atlantic Canada, where there's a labor shortage. So it will bring people to rural parts of Canada that have labor shortages too. Those ones are community-based versus employer-based. So the community will assess the needs of like what's needed there. We need a new bank, so then we need the labor force to operate a bank, that kind of stuff. That program is still a pilot program, so they're still in the beta phase, I suppose. So I'm not going to talk about that too much, but I just want to say like there are more than one programs, but those are the two ones that I say that are the easiest to understand, and I'm promoting the Atlantic Immigration Program. Like,
is there one for the West Coast as well?
Not specifically. The West Coast would kind of be covered under the rural and urban. So rural and urban is scattered across the entire country in rural and urban parts in different provinces. So even in Ontario, where I live, like Northern Ontario is considered parts of like the rural parts that people can come to. So you're still in Ontario, you're just like 5 hours away from Toronto kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So then, I mean, once you've come here, you've become a permanent resident, you have that card, the progression to citizenship is much easier. There's no amount of proving to anybody anything really. It's really just doing your time. So you come here and in the 3 years, you become eligible. Now the 3 years, you really count 3 years in days, because if you travel outside of the country, so like for me, I traveled quite a bit while I was a permanent resident. So I left, went to Jamaica, went here, went there. It just adds time onto the end. So instead of becoming a permanent resident in X years, it was X years plus all of the days that I had left the country for, which is fine. Like once you, within a 5-year period, you stay in the country for a max up to 3 years in days, I think it's 1,095 or something like that days, then you are eligible, you submit an application for citizenship, it takes a year to process, and you do your stuff. There's far less to do. That's the easiest application I had to do, the least nerve-wracking one that I had to do, because there's no proving of anything to anybody. You just do your time, and it's not dependent on whether you have a job or not, your income, nothing.
Is it bound to, do you need to have a permanent residency first in order to be eligible, or could you also be on a visa, on a work visa for, I don't know, 7 years and then use that status? No, you have to become a permanent resident first.
You have to, yeah. So if you move from temporary, if you're on a work visa, you're a temporary resident. You have to move from that to be a permanent resident, which you can do after X amount of time. And then you move on to citizenship after that. Or be born in Canada. Like my daughter is a citizen. Yeah.
Okay, good. You want to move on?
Yeah, for sure. There are a couple of questions in the chat. Do you want to address them at the end, or?
Well, there have been quite a few questions, but then they don't necessarily relate to what we, or didn't relate to what we were just talking about at that point of time. So,
well, I think maybe we can continue.
If you see one that fits, then feel free to answer it right away. But if it's off topic for what we are talking about right now, then I'd rather leave them until the end. Yes, otherwise we'll just.
Yeah, and I think that as we go along, some of the questions might already be answered absolutely. Based on the things we have scheduled. Yeah. Okay, I know Samar, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, had his hand up.
No, it's correct. I just want to elaborate on what you said, if you don't mind. So you think the Atlantic immigration program is better than the PNP? A provincial nomination program. This is the first thing. The second thing, how do we find a job in the Atlantic immigration program, and where do we start from, if you don't mind?
Very good questions. So that's another program he mentioned there that you can immigrate to Canada too. It's called the Provincial Nominee Program. You basically submit interest to a specific province that, you have these qualifications, you have these things going on for you. And then the province can assess you and decide whether to say, okay, yes, we would like you to come here based on your qualifications for the Provincial Nominee Program. I think that there is a little bit more convincing to do with that program than the Atlantic Immigration Program, for example, because you are, I guess, it's similar to express entry, kind of, but not fully, where you're having to convince somebody that you're qualified enough, or you're good enough, or you're this enough or that enough, right? Versus getting a job and just kind of following that natural progression. So I don't think it's similar. The Provincial Nominee Program, a province, I don't know how you guys use it depending on your different countries. Like a state in the United States is a province in Canada. So New York and Ontario. New York is a state, Ontario is a province. If you're from a small island, it's parish, right? So the province of Ontario, the province of Alberta will say, okay, let us assess you for your eligibility to come and be a part of this province. And therefore, once you're there, you have to stay in that province until you are a permanent resident, kind of like the Atlantic immigration program, right? So hopefully that answered your question. Then about the Atlantic immigration program, finding jobs. So this is something that I've also covered on my YouTube channel, how to find jobs. It can be an extensive process. It is a job. Finding jobs is a job, right, Michael? Isn't it? It's a
Absolutely.
job to find a job,
Yes.
right? All of the provinces have a list called designated employers, a list of designated employers. These are the employers that have been approved by the government to hire internationally. These lists are available publicly. You can go to my website, I have a blog on them, and all the links are there to the different lists. You can find based on, like, say, for instance, whatever field you're in. Say, for instance, if you're in construction, scan the list, find all of the companies that have an obvious name. Like, some companies won't have obvious names and you have to dive a little bit deeper, but Pinnacle Construction, something builders, jot down all those names and then go to their individual websites to see if they have a careers page. A lot of companies have careers pages on their websites. That's one way, right? Scan the list, find employers, check the employers if they're hiring. In the job bank, so Leila had spoken about the job bank. You want to filter your search and make sure you check the box that says international applicants all too. Like, international applicants can apply, right? So that you're not trying to apply for jobs where you have to be a citizen or a permanent resident. So those are two methods on how to, like, find jobs. Of course, I can go much deeper, but there's two videos on my website and 2 blog posts too, to help you to just kind of navigate and how to really just search for jobs. It's something I'm getting more into in the coming weeks, because I'm like I said, I'm promoting the program. I like it as a program. The proof of funds, like, if you are trying to apply through the express entry, you have to show the government, as a single person individual, you have to show them that you have 14,000 Canadian dollars in the bank, plus or minus. Whereas the Atlantic immigration program, the proof of funds is about, I want to say, $3,000 to $5,000, right? So it's a huge difference in proving to the government, because the cost of living over there is less than cost of living in Toronto too, right? So that's how you find jobs. Hopefully I answered your question somewhere.
Thank you very much. Just, if you don't mind, at the end, share your blog link and YouTube link.
Yeah, don't worry, we will send all the stuff out. So all the links that are mentioned during the webinar will be part of the messages we are going to send out, and we'll probably also put them on the website. So don't worry about that. All this stuff that Kristina is mentioning will be made available to you. Don't worry.
For sure. Okay, so we spoke about becoming a citizen. That's how you become a citizen. And I think, kind of like Leila said, in terms of common pitfalls, common blows that immigrants face when they come here, especially if you don't come through school. Not saying that school is the way, but if you come here as a permanent resident, you come because your express entry thing worked out, you come here as a landed permanent resident, finding a job can be tricky. Assimilating into the environment, especially if you have no networks, no prior contacts, connections, it can be tricky, right? Because even as a citizen, a Canadian citizen, trying to find a job, you're competing against a lot of people if you're in, like, a populated area like Toronto. I've seen a family come here. So it's a family with a young child. They landed as permanent residents. The male got he got a job. He got, like, a labor job, and then the female, she kind of she struggled a little bit to get a job that was in her field, right? And I think that coming from your country, of course, coming to Canada, there's a lot of humble pie that you have to eat, because sometimes you're taking a step back. And you kind of just have to be patient and humble. So she struggled for a little bit to get a job that she was comfortable with, that was not working necessarily at a retail store or at a food, like a restaurant, when her background is in pharmacy, right? She ended up working at like a fast food chain for a little while. And when you come here, right, you have a child, you have a young child, you have to figure out where's the child going to go when you have to go to work, right? Right. So navigating that, daycare can be quite pricey in Toronto. And so that dynamic it made her kind of want to go back home. Right. So I think that sometimes from your home country, the grass can look greener. Right. And you can probably hope or expect it to be good immediately. But oftentimes it's not necessarily the case. And I think that that's what gets people sometimes, is that their expectation versus reality. There's sometimes the expectation first surpasses what the reality is. And then they're a little bit disappointed.
Well, let me quickly comment on it, because you have to, it has a lot to do with research. And in order to avoid what Kristina just said, is or what you have to do is you need to figure out how much is hope, so stuff, assumptions, that, and how much is actually knowledge. So how much do you know about Canada already, on all the bits and pieces and the details, and how much is just that you hope that everything will be better there. So, and if you figure out how much you actually know and how much hope, there's nothing wrong with hope. You should have hope, otherwise it's not fun. But the amount of hope should be, in a sensible ratio compared to the knowledge. And the more knowledge you have, the safer you are in terms of the evaluation, what you're heading for. And so I actually would like to move on to ask you how to best prepare for it. But it's certainly about, in general, there's nothing to do with Canada. The more you know, the fewer bad surprises you are going to hit. Because you will get bad surprises. This is not the issue. The question is just how large the number is. So therefore, yes. So check if it's how if you have done your research, or if it's just hope or mainly hope, and then it may not be the right moment yet. So it's just a comment from me. So, but please go on, Kristina.
Yeah. Preparation, like Michael said, and research is very important. I think the biggest thing, or the first thing to start with in terms of research and preparation, is just finding out what is the cost of living where you're going. You have to do some reverse engineering to make sure you understand, like, what is it that you need to be making in order to maintain a reasonable lifestyle, right? You don't need to be rich immediately, or you don't need to be making a lot of money immediately, but you need to be at least able to afford your basic cost of living stuff. What is rent, right? Like right now, I just mentioned to a friend that, like a one bedroom, 1 bathroom apartment, right? 600 something square feet was renting for 2,500 Canadian dollars a month, right? So that kind of information is very, very critical for knowing when you're coming here. Research the different areas, research the different provinces. If you don't care about a specific city, town, province, like you're not going to family and you can go anywhere, research where it is that cost of living is good. What's rent like, what's car insurance like. Car insurance in Toronto is high. What's car insurance like in Winnipeg, for example, or Alberta, for example. And then research, just like the availability of the type of jobs that are available where you are going to, right? Some people come from like regulated fields like teaching or nursing, laboratory technicians, where you have to be licensed or registered with some Canadian board of the sort to assume that position in some workplaces, right? So like the research in terms of what is it do I need to do or be if I want to be a medical practitioner in Canada, right? So that your expectations when you come here, you know, if you have to go to school, then so be it. If you have to do a few courses or something, then so be it. School is obviously going to be is cheaper if you are already a permanent resident, which is also something that I kind of promote. It's just like, if you find that coming to school as an international student, like a semester, 2 semesters could be about 14,000 Canadian dollars. I can't convert it to all your currencies. But if you come as a permanent resident first, or you do have hopes of going to school, but that's a little bit steep, because as international students, we get charged like 3 times what a domestic person would be charged. Come here as a permanent resident, do your time, work, whatever kind of job that can afford your living, and then go to school afterwards to expand on your options of getting another job or a better job, right? So it's stuff like that to make. And YouTube is a helpful resource. There's a lot of people that will just tell you real time, real day, real life experience, what to expect when you come to Canada, because we're not trying to put any fluff on it or trying to say it's paradise over here. Come on. It's not, that's not the case. So just get some real life experiences via YouTube, just to get, you know, helpful, realistic expectations of like what it's like to be in Canada, to come to Canada. It can be overwhelming. I would say, like, do the research in chunks, you know, do cost of living first, do this first, do that first, just so that you don't feel discouraged or overwhelmed. It's possible. It's just, it'll take some work. It'll take some humble pie and a lot of patience to get to where you want to get to. But it's possible.
Okay, let me also comment on that, because don't forget that the normal, let's say, internet search is only just one way of getting information. It's an important way, especially if it's about official information and so on. But if it's really about the details, like Kristina just said, about rents in certain places and so on, or really specific information, remember, you're not the first person who is going down this road. There have been thousands or probably even millions over the years that have done it before. And they are there, they have gone this way, and they know. Okay, mm-hmm. So they have this information, and there are so many ways you can use LinkedIn, or for example, InterNations is particularly interesting, because you can on InterNations you can see. You can find people, where you can search for people who are in Canada and maybe from the region, but are from the region you are from. Okay, so you have an African background, a European background, an Asian background. You can actually see if there's someone in terms of this international career path or path of living in different countries that relates to your situation. And there's nothing wrong sending them a message saying, I noticed, or, you know, you have the similar background. You are in Alberta, for example. Would you mind answering a few questions? And this may, you know, you never know, but the worst thing that can happen is that the person doesn't answer. That's the worst. Okay, this is the worst. You're not going to get killed unless you do really stupid stuff. Okay, but it may you never know. It may be just this person may be becoming your first friend after moving to Alberta, then, because, you know, like the person is really friendly, and you know, you stay in touch, and then you actually have a first contact there when you arrive. You never know, but if you make this a system, and if you do not place too much hope on one particular contact, but rather make a networking strategy out of it, then you will build up a lot of interesting connections, resources. You will learn a lot, and you have first-hand quality information in terms of the place you are considering going to, in terms of Canada as a whole, but also then the provinces or the towns or whatever. So this is also, don't forget, when we talk about research, this is also research, and very often it is better than just checking out what the government put out on the internet. All right. So it's part of it, but it should not be or you should not limit yourself to it. Okay. So now we are basically discussing how to prepare for it. What else would you suggest, Kristina, in terms of getting ready or preparing for the application process and the move and so
on? So what did I talk about? I spoke about doing your research, finding out cost of living, determining, the kind of career path that you want to pursue or you're already in. What does that require? What does it require of you to come into Canada and kind of move into that? And I think like Michael said, like a lot of networking is helpful. Like my first job and the longest job that I've had in Canada came from somebody on the inside, right? I knew somebody on the inside. I said, can you please submit my resume for me? Submitted my resume. And networking goes a long way in Canada, because then a personal reference versus just submitting your resume on one of the sites. Not that it's possible. It's just that once you get somebody on the inside, it's a little bit easier to get your resume seen, right? Because you're not a needle in a haystack. So doing a lot of networking, and like Michael said, InterNations is a good resource. There's people who are already in Canada in a certain job. Canada, I think, also provides, they do provide quite a bit of resources to help immigrants to assimilate into the Canadian culture. I'm trying to remember. There's this program that I'll make sure I'll find information when we'll send it out at the end. But there is a program that I had volunteered with before, where they would pair me, who I'm already here and established and I'm working in a certain career field, pair me with somebody who is new, a newcomer, who is interested in the same field as me or as I am, right? And then so they are able to, we had like, I think 3 months or so of like just talking once a week or so, just to help what the real life experience is like working. I was working in construction, to, help him to connect with anybody in the industry that I know who would be looking for a job, help him to tailor his resume to Canadian standards, right? That's something that's important. That's something that Michael and I were working on too, to make sure that you're kind of submitting it in a way that it's what the Canadian employers would expect to be
convincing,
seen.
Yes.
Right, convincing, right? And yeah, so that goes a long way too, right? There are settlement services. There are programs here to help get the information or get people settled or find networks and stuff in terms of preparation. And after you've done all that work, a lot of the preparation is mental preparation. I think even when my mom came here earlier this year, there was no mental preparation to know that, okay, this is what you need to expect. Okay, we're not going anywhere. There's COVID. It's cold outside anyway. Nobody was trying to put on 5 layers of clothes. There's a mental process that you have to kind of go through in order to set yourself up for success in terms of that. And that mental preparation will come from the research and then tailoring your expectations to what you've found, especially. And just like your willingness to eat the humble pie.
Also, I have a quick comment on that. Of course, if you can afford it, it's a very good idea to visit the place before you make the move. And the important thing is not to visit the place and behave like a tourist there. That's not the moment of time to do that. So you don't go there and visit the churches and the museums and eat in the restaurant every day. No, you try to, especially if you have established a few contacts there already, it's easier. So you meet with the people you met through the internet. And you buy your groceries at the local supermarket, and you use public transport, or you do whatever you would do later after moving there, just to get a feel for what life is there for real, rather than for a tourist, which is always different. So you have to kind of make it as real for yourself as possible, in order to find out, okay, because usually there are some things that you are afraid of, or you're not sure if you are ready to cope with them. And probably some things, you're relaxed, it's not an issue. So let's say you think everything is great about Canada, but you're not sure about the cold. So then you do not travel to Canada in June, all right? That's not the idea. No, you go there in January.
In February, the worst month.
February. So you can ask your network, when is the worst month? And where is the worst place in the area I'm considering? This is when and where you go. And then you check, okay, this is not going to be like a week. This is going to be a few months every year. Am I likely to survive that? Is it still good enough? Because it won't get worse then. If this is it. It will be, you have experienced the worst already. And if the more information you get in terms of this kind of experience, the more the safer you are in terms of making the decision if this is the place, or if this is just a funny idea that you should not further pursue. Yes, so not everyone may be able to afford it, but if you can, it's a very good idea in terms of making sure you're not making the biggest mistake of your life.
One thing I want to do is say, of course, we're all at different ages and stages, and the younger you are, the more time you have to make mistakes, I suppose. But one thing for me and another one of my immigrant community friends, because both of us at some point, I went back to Jamaica during the COVID pandemic because I needed support for my newborn child, right? Family support. And of course, depending on the age and the stage that you are at, is that when I came here, the mission was to have the option to be here whenever I wanted to be here, which is I came here on the pursuit for my permanent residency and then citizenship. And once you are a citizen, you can be wherever you want. You can go back to your country if you wanted to, and you can come and go as you please. And one thing that we had discussed on a previous webinar with a Canadian immigration consultant is that the option, we subscribed and did the deed, did our sentence to have the option. When you come here, you don't have to stay here. You don't have to stay. You can come here, you cannot like it, or you can go back home, right? You can go to another country if you wanted to. Of course, depending on the age and stage, you don't feel like there's a lot of flexibility for that. This is your one shot. But it's not a sentence. It's not a life sentence if you come here and you happen to not like it, right? You can go back to your country or go to another province. But if you just do the work, and not do the work, but do the sentence, I don't want to make sentence sound like a bad thing. It's not a jail, prison sentence or anything. You're doing your time and you have the piece of paper, the document, the book that says you're a Canadian citizen. I can do whatever I want now, kind of a thing, options.
Okay, good. Should someone engage the help of specialists in terms of relocation consultants, lawyers, tax advisors, and so on? So what's your take on that?
It's definitely helpful to have somebody who is experienced in the application process helping you. Is it absolutely necessary? No. Like I used an immigration consultant at the very beginning because I didn't know where to start. Right. So the immigration consultant basically said, here's what your options are. Right. After that, he told me what my options are. And I said, okay, fine. I don't need you anymore. And then I submitted my application for my visa and it got rejected. And then I had to go back to him. Right. No, my application got rejected because I didn't do enough research, but also I was using a general checklist versus a country-specific checklist. Now, things could be different from country to country in terms of what is required of you for the same application, right? So in Jamaica, you need to have a police certificate. If you're applying from the US, you may not, right? So I didn't have the right checklist, and so I was missing documents, so I got rejected. After that, I didn't use an immigration consultant, but I did use somebody to just look over my application just to make sure that all my T's are crossed and my I's are dotted. So it depends on the complexity or the level of comfort that you have with going through the process, but also your ability to afford a consultant, right? I did an application to sponsor my husband because he was Jamaican. I had to sponsor him to come to Canada. I was not interested in trying that application on my own. And so I hired a lawyer for that one. Right. So it depends on the type of application. So for instance, Layla's situation where she tried to get in, she was rejected or her application was denied or whatever. This is where I would suggest pursuing professional help to troubleshoot, because they will know what to look for, right? They will know like what you got wrong. They will know what to suggest. It's not going to be like, because you have a professional, therefore it's going to be approved. No, but having a professional who is aware of the process, it can be more beneficial if you're not super familiar, or if you've hit a road bump like a rejection or something like that. So it depends.
Leila, do you quickly want to ask a question?
Yes, also I want to make a comment actually. In my first application, when I got the rejection, I did it myself. When I get the letter, it will be rejected, and I contacted and consulted immediately. In Canada, it is not easy to find a reliable consultant, and it's expensive. And then further on, I work with her together. But the strange rule, this weird rule, the reason why they rejected my application, nobody knew it. Even if you collect information on the internet, if you do your research, still there's small boxes, you don't know it, and they are using it. Therefore, I am very, very disappointed. Nobody knows about this weird rule, why they rejected me, even the consultants. Just be ready for everything. And as I said, I had the consultant again, they didn't upload my English exam. So my consultant is also a kind of desperate. She cannot do anything, not too much. As you said, they are busy. There are thousands of applicants. It is not really, Canadians are always proud of their immigration system. I think this is one of the best, but they are failing, unfortunately. As I said, I had a consultant, but still, it didn't improve anything.
Right.
That's all what I want to say.
Okay, thanks for sharing again, Leila, and I'm sorry about your situation. And like I said, like an immigration consultant does not mean that it'll happen for you, right? A consultant should be able to, I think, help you understand what you can do to improve. And not all immigration consultants are made equally, unfortunately. I'm not going to say that. I'm not knocking your immigration consultant or anything like that, but for sure, there is a way to find out why you were rejected. There are GC notes that consultants can order from immigration to find out like what the comments were on your application, to kind of follow a breadcrumb trail to help improve, right? But your situation is very specific and probably requires like more one-on-one talking to just say, okay, well, let's see where we can go from here, kind of a thing. But yeah, like generally speaking, a consultant should be able to help if you hit any roadblocks or if you're not comfortable with the process.
Okay, Kristina, you want to ask a question? You have raised your hand twice already.
Yes. Everything is very interesting. I have an experience of relocating to a different country. All this that you have described, to check out what are the expenses, where I can find a place to stay, and all of this, it requires a lot of energy to do, especially if somebody is moving so far away, for example, from Europe to Canada. And what made it easy for me before relocating is to secure a job prior to the relocation. So is there a way to find a remote job before relocating to Canada and like become more, know more about Canada through the company that you are working with? Are there any ways to do that?
I don't understand the second question, sorry, but the first question, I think you said, is there any way to find jobs before you come here? That was your first question. And your second question was what, sorry?
I believe that finding a job before relocating to Canada will make you know about the country better and make you mentally stronger to be more resilient when you already going to relocate there. So I feel and also according to my experience, the best way to relocate is having found a job prior to relocation.
Okay, right. Before when I had mentioned the Atlantic Immigration Program, and like I agree with you fully that I think that once you have a job, it's just there's a lot more security, like mentally, financially, when you come here, when that's already in place. And that's the Atlantic Immigration Program is that exactly. You have to find a job first, then you get that job offer, then you come to Canada, then you apply for permanent residency. But it's specific to Eastern Canada, right? So only the 4 provinces in Eastern Canada while you're working and waiting for permanent residency. And the ways how to do it. So we'll share that information with you at the end, because I've done 2 videos already and 2 blog posts on how to find jobs that are going to be accepting international applicants, because not all of them are. And I think that this is the downfall or the roadblock that a lot of people have been facing without really knowing that that's the reason why, right? Canadian employers in other parts of Canada are probably only looking for people who are already in Canada, because it's a hassle for them. It's a hassle to bring somebody in from internationally. So, but in Atlantic Canada, there's a whole program for that specifically.
Are there opportunities for remote job?
Remote? Oh, that's what you mean. Okay. So you mean like get a job, work at the job from your country before moving?
Yes.
I don't see a lot of that. I've not looked for that specifically. I would probably have to look at that. I also don't really think that is necessarily beneficial in terms of trying to move to Canada. It's beneficial in terms of you're earning some money, right? But in terms of trying to move to Canada and have like a secure remote job, because like if you think of it from the employer's perspective, right? How can they prove that you are you? How can they prove that you're doing the job? How can they prove that you're actually working? The only way I see that is like for freelancers who are just doing stuff on the internet through Upwork or Fiverr. But for an employer to hire somebody remotely internationally, I haven't seen that yet. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. If I come across it, I'll definitely put it somewhere. But
I was working remotely for Israel, and it's a thing already.
Okay.
And it proves to be beneficial not only for the workers but also for the companies. There are various applications and programs where we can work through the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Basically this is what I wanted to say. And my specialization is mostly on digital marketing. And if there is a place where I can look for a job specifically for digital marketing, maybe it will be helpful for me.
Okay. Well, I haven't come across any yet, but I do know, like I said, there are platforms like Upwork. I don't know if you know of Upwork or Fiverr. Have you ever heard of those two?
These ones are specifically for freelancers. What I'm referring to is something like consultant jobs. It's like you are an employee, but you are a self-employed employee for the company.
Right. I haven't seen that yet. But if I come across it, I'll put it on my website for sure.
Okay.
To say, I don't think it's impossible. It probably does exist, but I haven't seen it yet.
I also have a comment on that. If you really want to move to Canada, but then you see yourself, confronted with the option to either, because it's difficult to basically get the job you want. So you could go move to Canada, but then not do your job, but your job is very important to you and you don't want to make the sacrifice. So if the job is relatively important and Canada is not as much as it is for others, but you would still want to go, you could consider the little detour of deliberately joining either a Canadian company, a company that is present where you are, let's say a Canadian company in Poland, for example, or an international business that is also well exposed into the Canadian market. Because then you would join, let's say in Warsaw, we had someone from Warsaw here, so you would join the company in Warsaw and work for them for a couple of years. And then you can try to make the move within the business, within the company. Obviously, that should be a company that has a good presence in Canada, otherwise it's not going to work. But it would give you the opportunity to stay within the industry, have a good job right away, and increase the chances that you will find such a job later within the same company in Canada as well. So, and then if it doesn't work out, you still have a good job within the industry, which is very important to you. So this is also an option you may want to keep in mind if Canada is attractive, but it's not everything to you.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
I've done it myself basically years ago when I was in London. I joined, actually it was by chance that it happened to be an American software company. But once I worked for them, I noticed I got really interested in working in the US. Mm-hmm. And I noticed the easiest way to move from London to New York was actually within the company. And it was mm-hmm. very easy for me. I didn't do much. The only thing I did that time was to convince my new boss in New York that I would be, to give the job to me. So normal job application. And he was interested in me because I had been working for the company already. So I knew the software and all the stuff. So I wasn't a complete beginner in terms of the specifics. So that was attractive to him, and the rest didn't matter because it would all be passed on to lawyers and so on. So I made the move within 3 months. So yes. It may be an attractive option.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, but it's Kristina's show, so we'll move on. And
there's a couple of raised hands.
Okay, yes, we should. I would like to also finish what we have planned. So, but yeah, okay, Maria, go on, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad you, Mike, you talk about that option. Right now, I'm working in a renewables industry. Living in Chile, I'm from Bolivia. I'm not, now this country is not working for me, so that's why I'm planning to see another options. The problem is that what I've seen in my company is that people are, yes, they are hiring positions in South America, but not planning to mobilize. So yes, they save money because the positions are lower, the incomes are lower here. So and because I'm 40 right now, and it's difficult to find another job, as was explaining before. I was thinking of studying, but I wanted to ask what kind of studies they need. If it's another career, it's like 5 years, or so it's very hard to start all over again. And sometimes we don't have like the option to go and visit Canada to see if it works. We just have one. Maybe some savings to go somewhere, expecting it's going to result a good life, right? So I wanted to ask what kind of studies they're requesting, and how would be, I think it would be the easiest way maybe to start all over again, but how much time does it take that option?
That's a great question. So usually people who are pursuing schools, they probably have already done, or at my stage, your stage, they probably have already done some level of schooling. And so we pursue like continuing studies, which is usually maybe like a postgraduate certificate or something. So when in my case, I had finished a bachelor's degree in architecture. So then I came to Canada and I did a 1-year postgraduate program in project management. When you study for 1 year, you get a work permit that is valid for 1 year. So in that 1 year, you need to get a job and get like 1 year work experience in a skilled job to move on into the express entry program and then towards permanent residency. Some people will do a 2-year program just so that if you do a 2-year program, you can get a 2-year work permit, 2 to 3 years work permit. So then you have more time to find a job and be in that job for at least a year, right? So it depends on kind of where you've started already. But something too that we'll talk about later on in the thing is like when you choose a school in Canada, usually if your whole goal is Canadian permanent residency, then just go to a college versus a university. Universities are going to be more expensive, right? I went to a college. I went to Humber College in Canada. I studied a postgraduate certificate in project management. But of course, to qualify for a post certificate, you have to have some sort of undergraduate studies, right? So it's going to be dependent on what your educational background is already. But you can always go and study like a diploma level program, as long as it's from a school that is on I forget the name now, but it's a designated list of school that is able to have international people come, but also you can qualify for a work permit after. That's what's super, super, super important, right? And you can study a 1 to 2 year program or 1 year, but it's just that 1 year is tight. It was tight for me. So
how much do you think you need for that? How much money?
So right now, I think a 1 year program is about 14,000 Canadian dollars. So of course, a 2 year program is going to be 2 times that. It depends on the school and it depends on where in Canada you go. So I'm speaking specifically in the Toronto area. You don't have to go to Toronto, especially if you're not tied to anybody. Schools could be a little bit cheaper, maybe in Atlantic Canada or in Alberta, for example. So, but roughly you're looking a little more than 10,000 Canadian dollars for tuition. And then to get your student visa, you also have to show that you have an extra $10,000 for living expenses.
Well, make sure that whatever you pick really relates to the overall goal. So, because it's a lot of money that you pay, and if it really moves your career forward and you learn something that you really you're interested in and that it can be used in the future, that's great. So I'm absolutely for education, but make sure it's not just for getting to Canada and that's the end of the story so far, because there are several reasons that speak against that, but the most important one is that it's actually a lot of money that may be used. If you have this amount of money, you have to check if there wasn't another good option that may be less expensive in order to achieve your goal. So I would, if it's for your career, it's great. If it's just to get to Canada, I would be careful and check if there aren't better options, especially as you're willing to invest money into it. Because the more money you have, of course, the easier it gets. It's like always in life. So therefore, I would not jump at that option. It may be a good one, but it's also good to check, especially if you have the money, if there aren't others that are equally good or better and may even be much cheaper if you have, if you talk about so much money.
And this is kind of why you won't hear me stop talking about the Atlantic Immigration Program, because then it bypasses that need to go to school. even if you do want to pursue further studies, do it after you become a Canadian permanent resident, because then the tuition is like $6,000, right? Versus $14,000, right? And then, like Michael said, make it relevant. Like I was fresh out of university and I was looking to pursue further studies anyway. Of course, my end goal was Canada. And when I met with a consultant, and this is something that I talk about in my book, it's just like, go down the list and see what pairs best with what you already have. I did architecture, project management. Project management goes well with anything really, but it went especially well with architecture because at first I had chosen graphic design and he was like, maybe look again. And so I looked again and then I came upon project management, right? So, you know, there are, like Michael said, other options that are not going to be costing $14,000. And so Atlantic Immigration Program is something that you can think about. Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. So there's another, so Saul had another question.
Yes, I might change the sequence, but because this episode is going to be over soon, I need to go as well. My question is, could you post your and Michael links on the InterNation page or here somewhere? So later on, once, because there are many questions over and over, and we can't discuss all these here. So if we have the links, whenever the questions come, we can chat this with you regarding those openings or options later on. So and second thing, I want to ask you or even Michael, basically the Atlantic one is the job based, right? It's not the point based. So when you're doing the job based, is there a way we can find out which province or which area in Canada they have the list of the jobs in demand? So from there, we can find out which one suits us. And instead of going through one by one over and over the companies, we go straight to those companies who are linked with those jobs. And then we contact them straight away instead of moving around from company to company and that. So these are the things I want to ask. So first your link, your and Michael link and the page, YouTube or whichever, so we can contact you later. And the difference and how we go by, because since we will start applying through the job-based thing, there should be some kind of lists and jobs in demand in certain areas where we can shortlist which one should go for. Right. Thank you.
So for sure, when we're done here, we're going to be passing on all the links and information to where to find us and stuff like that. My website has a live chat feature. I'm not always there live, but if you leave a message, then I get it later on and I respond to it after.
But please give us a little time. So we haven't prepared that yet. So don't send us messages 1 hour after the webinar asking where the message is. So it may take a few days because it's a lot of stuff. So we need to put it together and it's weekend. So please allow a few days, but you will get it, we promise. Okay. So Kristina, go on with the second part.
Fair enough. Fine. Thank you.
The second part is a very, 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 I trust me, relevant. Like you just want to see the jobs from the people who are hiring, right? And I used to partner with a company that did this, where they went and did all the work, put the list of jobs together for the employers in Atlantic Canada who are hiring. I don't have that partnership anymore. After COVID, things kind of fell apart with the company and I discontinued my partnership. So I don't know if they're still doing it. I know the ownership changed, so I'm not interested in repartnering with them. But I can't tell you, like, if you go to the job bank, you can filter like where you're looking, right? So Canada Job Bank, and this is also something that's on my YouTube channel, right? Canada Job Bank. You go to the advanced search, you only pick the Atlantic provinces, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, and Labrador. Just check those boxes, right? You can even get more specific and check specific cities. But if you don't know any city particularly, just check the province, check the box that says international applicants too, and then kind of filter through. Now, that list is not necessarily going to be from only the employers who have been approved to hire internationally, it's going to be a mix, but at least it will narrow down your search to look for people in that province, right? So you kind of just compare that list now of the jobs that are available with the list of designated employers to make sure that this employer is on the list. So therefore you can apply for this job and he can hire you from outside of Canada.
Right.
So there's a video, I have a whole video that I did, I think it was 2 Sundays ago, that you'll get all the links and all these wonderful things too.
As far as I remember, we have sent out the link to Kristina's website already. So if you can't wait for our message, which would be a good sign, of course, then you can check, get the message and click on the link, and then you have like a lot of.
I went over the site before joining, and I saw two YouTube links on the InterNations page for Kristina's. So I thought I didn't know that were these for the links or were these for this online meeting. So I didn't click those, but I saw two or three of those on the site. The ones what you were asking what were those about, and were those like for the job things, for this applying procedure, or for this meeting? I don't know that, but there were 2 or 3 over there on the page. Yes, right.
And if you specifically navigate to the blog, so my channel is As Told by Canadian Immigrants. If you specifically go to the blog, that's the first 2 that are on there, I think, are the job search specifically and the resources. And then the second one is just talking generally, I think, about the Atlantic Immigration Program. I forget now, but the top 2 ones, I think, are about the Atlantic Immigration Program.
Right. Thank you.
We have like Queenie Bruce has been waiting for a long time, so we should take this question. And then I would, don't go away, everyone, because I want to speak about the book, because Kristina has written a great book, and I believe this could be a great resource for making your life a lot easier. So I definitely want to talk about that, but Queenie Bruce has been waiting for so long, so we'll answer this question first. Go on, please. If you haven't fallen asleep already over our long. You still there?
Queenie, are you there? Queenie Bruce? That's the name of your thing anyway on here.
Apparently not. Okay, then yeah, let's talk about the book, Kristina. You have written a book on the topic. So yes, and tell us a little what motivated you, and well, I guess people can figure out what it is about, but it would be interesting to know when people should, when at what point of time in the process the book should come into place, basically, or into action. So why did you write it, and how to use it?
Okay, so the title of the book is From Foreign Student to Canadian Citizen and Everything in Between: How to Move to Canada and Become a Canadian Citizen. What I found is in my journey, I mean, when I started, it was a few years ago. There's certainly more people talking about it now, but there was not one place where I could go and find the full process in one place everywhere. If you go to the Citizenship and Immigration Canada website, they'll tell you how to do this and then how to do that and how to do that, but not how it comes all together. So, and my whole YouTube channel and my whole everything that I do is based on helping people to fill in the gray areas and to answer the questions that aren't necessarily the easiest to find on the Citizenship and Immigration website. So I wrote this book as the full process, step by step, how to come to Canada. Of course, through my route, which is the foreign student way. You come here as a student first, and then how to progress into becoming a citizen step by step. So there's 20 steps in there as to where to start, what do I recommend, and then I kind of share a little bit about my journey, what I got wrong, and what I suggest you do so that you don't waste the money that I got rejected. I told you why I got rejected, where you should be making sure that you should be double checking and checking the box to save you time and money, but also to help you just to understand how things progress. at what point in the process, so it starts from just the inception of the thought, right? It starts from just thinking like, okay, I want to move to Canada, where do I start, right? And if I want to go to school in Canada, where do I start to? I forget who asked that question, but Marielle, if you're thinking about going to school, where to start in terms of what schools you should be looking at, the types of schools, the types of programs, all of that stuff. So it starts from that first seed, and then it takes you all the way through to getting a Canadian passport. Because it is from the perspective of going to school, it is more relevant to somebody who is interested in taking that route. Now, how it is broken up in chapter 1 is talking about the foreign student aspect. After that, you're a foreign worker and then a permanent resident. So somebody who is interested in probably just being landed as a permanent resident could pick up from chapter 2 and follow through to the chapter 5 if you're not interested in going to school. But the main target audience is somebody who is interested in or can afford to go to school, and how to progress through citizenship with that. It's not a big read. If you're concerned about, like, if you don't like reading, it's a 1 week read. And right now I'm working on the audiobook version. So by the end of next week, I'll have the audiobook version available on Audible. My book is available on Amazon. Everything's on my website. You just go to my website, click the links, everything's there. You can get to that information. And really, if you're just interested in the process, I think the ebook is probably $3.99 maybe. Then just understanding how to progress through the stages, I think, is helpful if you're just interested in the general overall process of moving to Canada.
Yes, and even if you consider working with a consultant, the consultants will will work best for you or with you if you are prepared. Yeah. So if you are clueless, of course they can still help you, but it's better if you come and you have familiarized yourself with the process a bit already, and you have good questions. So questions are fine, but good questions are better. So if you read the book first, it will prepare you for making this decision, making the right decision about that, but also making sure you ask the right questions, because you cannot expect the consultant to know and then comment on or answer or whatever stuff that you haven't pulled up. How should they? How can they do this? Any special thing about your background or a problem you have or whatever. So they are usually, if they are good, they are experienced with asking, like questions that may not have anything to do with what you have in mind, because they know exactly why they are asking it. You cannot expect them to come up with any relevant question that, may be important in your particular case, because they do not know your past life. So the better you are aware of where questions have been asked, the more likely they can then understand the particulars of your situation and help you. So even if you plan to work with professionals, same applies to lawyers, tax advisors, coaches, and so on. So the better you are prepared, the more you will get out of it, of this work, and basically it will actually reduce the costs, because you will probably need the person less than others. Yes, and also because usually they are paid by time, one way or the other, which, they can only save the time. Also you increase the chance of being successful with whatever you want to achieve. So therefore, it's you cannot delegate the responsibility you have for your life and for this move. They can help you, but it will stay your responsibility. It's your move, not theirs. If you keep this in mind, then you will have the right approach working with them, and then you maximize the chances to be successful with it. Okay, so but don't try to delegate the project to the consultant. Then it's going to fail, I promise you. So, and even the second to worst thing is that they will just fail and you're not going to make it to Canada. The worst thing is you make it to Canada in anyway, because you're probably then going to be very unhappy because you're simply not prepared. You didn't do your homework. So, so therefore, I think the book is an excellent and very inexpensive resource to find out, is this the right track for you, or does it look like one? And where, you know, should you prepare yourself as the for next, basically? Yeah.
Yep. In a nutshell, yeah, that's what it is. And it will help you to determine when you don't need an immigration consultant, because you don't always need one along the way. So it will help you through, like, just like Michael said, being prepared and informed and knowing what the ins and outs are based on a real life experience, because it's really my entire journey from start to finish, how long things took and what you need to take into consideration if you're considering the whole process. So, yeah.
So last question I have prepared for today was, or is, future plans of all the exciting stuff you are doing. So you have written the book, there will be the audio version of it. You're doing the weekly video podcast kind of thingy. You do the on YouTube, you have the website. So what's in the pipeline?
Well, since I'm promoting the Atlantic Immigration Program quite heavily, because I think that it's a good idea to go, if you already have a job, I plan on going to Atlantic Canada and testing out the grounds for you guys, because I send people there. I've never been there, right? So I plan on going to Atlantic Canada to see what it's like, to see, you know, live there for a little bit. I'm not going there for months on end. I have a life to live and a kid and all these things. But I plan on going there. I've also just started a foundation, the Canadian Immigration Foundation, to kind of help people who are outside of their countries. I've always wanted to give scholarships for people who are interested in school. I've given a scholarship away before, but they were barely made a dent in what a school fee would be. But then that was my own personal thing. So now I've started a foundation that I will get government assistance and different things for, to help people, one, to get scholarships, but also to help with more information. And then when you get here, how to be here and thrive, right? And where to connect, where to find people, how to find housing, different things to help immigrants really do well when they come to Canada and not necessarily fall into depression or a rut or anything like that. But yeah, and then just continue my journey in YouTube. I think I will write another book called Should You Come to Canada? Should You Really? And I will write a book on the Atlantic Immigration Program to help, like, just the step-by-step process of that. But I have a beta student right now that I'm going to see if I can help them find a job, get them into Atlantic Canada, and document the whole process. So I have a beta student that I'm going to meet with later this week to really find out, like, real life experience of the program that I'm promoting so heavily. So that's what's
excellent.
Next.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, so I'll be following that certainly.
Yes.
So it's yes. Even though I'm not planning to move to Canada, so even I not planning to move to Canada will follow this. We'll be following this exciting stuff. So you should do the same. Queenie Bruce is back. Are you ready to ask your question now?
Queenie, I don't know, maybe she doesn't realize that that's her name.
I lowered the hand and the hand is up again, so I assumed.
Queenie, can you unmute and ask your question?
I don't know, there seem to be problems, maybe with the mic or whatever, so we don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
All right, so, well, is there...
Well, I'm going to scan through just to see if there are any things that we didn't cover based on the questions that were asked. So this person here is Joni.
That's a good idea.
Good person, keep growing. Thank you so much, Joni, for your kind words and your summary. Thank you. I have to go now. Yes, no problem. Yes, immigration consultants can be quite pricey, depending on what you need them for, right? So the more prepared you are, if you just need somebody to review your application, it's a different cost than somebody doing the entire process for you, right? So I opted to have the consultant do my application for me because it was rejected. And at the time, it cost probably 300 to 250 to 300 US at the time. And that was a small application. After that, I only used resources or paid for them to review an application because I was informed and because I knew what I was doing by that time. So this is something too that the book will help you, right? It will help you to reduce your immigration consultant costs by this $12 investment.
A quick question on that, Kristina. I remember you mentioned someone that you have been working with who is reliable and you actually can recommend in that regard, so that you don't have to go to just anyone.
Right. So if you, on my website, I've interviewed him a couple of times. His name is Paul McAllister, and his company is his immigration company is Can Move Immigration. He was in Canada. He's a citizen of Canada now, but he's currently in the Cayman Islands. And he's knowledgeable, he's reasonable with his rates, and very professional. And I trust him as a person to recommend to people that this is an immigration consultant that I can send you to. Through my website, I think if you go to my website, you go to shop, that you can get a 10% discount on his fees if you just get that coupon there. So as told by CanadianImmigrants.com/shop. At the bottom, you fill out your information, you'll get a link to his page, and you'll also get the 10% discount code. And like I said, he is able to tailor based on your needs, right? So if you just need a review, he can do a review. If you need the whole process done, he can do that too. So his name is Paul McAllister. Can Move Immigration. I'm just reading through the questions here. Okay. Rent is different from province to province. Yes, that is true. So there are specific questions about specific job or career fields. What are those fields like in Canada? But because I'm not, like, I don't know the demands of every kind of profession. I know that construction is booming. I work in construction. So, you know, there's a lot of jobs in administrative or project manager, different kind of jobs available in construction. When it comes to the financial or marketing or anything like that, I can't say anything with absolute certainty because I haven't done any research in that in particular.
Hold on, I would like to comment on that because that's important. Do not, I mean, it applies to Canada, applies to any other country in the world as well. Do not go to Canada to find any job. Yeah, I have to go to Canada, I'll do anything. You probably won't be successful with either one, because no one wants to employ someone who just needs a job. Looking needy is the worst thing you can do as an applicant, okay? Because if the other side discovers that you cannot or you will not say no to a bad offer, then you're not attractive, because they cannot rely on you making a good decision in terms of if you're right for the job or not. So therefore, they want people who say, let's look at what the position is about, and if it's right for you and for me, then I'll do it. I hope you see it the same. This is the deal. So at eye level. So you need to focus on what is the value you can create. Now, if you think about going to Canada, then the question is, what is the value you can create in Canada? And then you have to look at your personal profile, your professional past, your skills, your experience, whatever, and then see how you can relate this to various options in Canada. And then you will know what kind of jobs that could be, and then you can research the relevant industries if it looks rather good or if it's difficult or whatever. So then we are back to research. But approach it like that. Otherwise, your job search will not focus on the right elements that will finally convince the other side to give the job to you. So don't forget the job, and don't forget that it is about the value you bring and not where you're coming from. No one cares about your personal your situation, at least not until they have employed you. Then they may get interested in you as a human being. But until they have, both sides have signed the contract, they cannot be interested in just anyone in the whole world or everyone in the whole world. So therefore, this is important. Focus on what you really want to do, what you're good at, how the stuff you can convince others by, and then do your research, and then you will find out if you stand a good chance to find this right position, right employer, etc. in Canada, or if it may not be the best country for you because of this or that good reason. But don't go for any job. It will be a nightmare, or it will be a disaster in terms of whatever the result is.
And too, on a personal level, it could make you very unhappy, because you
Yes.
could end up just doing something that you completely don't want to be doing, and you feel stuck, and then you become discouraged, and then it's a domino effect of just negative emotions. So
yes, and it will usually be, it's likely to be something that's not paid well on top of everything else.
On
So
top of
yes, it's
everything,
a
A bad
straight road
recipe.
to unhappiness. Unhappiness in Canada, which is not what we are promoting here.
No.
Okay, you find other questions in the meantime?
Yeah, somebody asked about scholarships are accessible. The person, he has heard of cases where applications were rejected because they were overqualified for schools they applied for. For example, a master's degree holder applying for vocational school. So I think that's very relevant, because an immigration officer who is reviewing your application needs to be convinced of your intentions with coming to Canada. Like, even if long-term you plan to stay in Canada, you need to prove to them that you have no intentions of running off in the country, and that you intend to leave at the end of your stay. Even though at the end of your stay, you can get a work permit and work, they want to know that you're going to follow the natural progression, right? So after you're a student, you're not a student anymore, you can leave. If you don't leave, then you become a this, then you can work, right? But if you are a master's holder and you're applying for vocational school, they need to be convinced of your intentions, with your true intentions of coming to Canada, right? So even though you have a long-term immigration goal, what are you bringing to the table for Canada? Right? What are you really coming to study this? And why are you studying veterinary science at vocational school if you have a master's degree in IT, right? Like, things need to add up for somebody looking at your application, right? Even though immigration is big, yes, they're inviting people to come here. They want to know that your intentions are legitimate, and it's important to show legitimacy and ties to your country and ties to what you're doing next with what you're doing now, in order to not be rejected, right? So applications get rejected because they're not convinced, in what your story is not convincing, right? So it's very important to not present yourself as, I guess, overqualified, if this is what this person is saying, but don't apply to vocational school after having a master's degree. But also, scholarships are available for international students. They're not the same as scholarships that are available for domestic students, but they are scattered about. And that's something that my foundation wants to work on too. If not just providing scholarships myself, it's also like resources as where to find scholarships. So that will be in the future making of the foundation. Oh, you know what? We spoke about English test. You can do English or French test, because French is the second language of Canada. So the language proficiency tests can be either English or French. Veronica had a question. Sorry, I didn't see your hand there.
That's fine. I joined kind of late. I don't know why my computer was showing me I still had an hour left. So I'm sorry I joined kind of late, but I did check your website, and thank you for putting up this service. Oh my God, I think everybody needs that, because there's so much movement going on in the world nowadays, people are looking for better places to live and to, start their lives anew. So I have a question. I think your website and your discussion is mostly about students who want to move to Canada as a student, right?
Not
But I
necessarily.
have actually a lot of relatives over there.
Yeah.
I have a lot of relatives in Canada. And in fact, I have no relatives in Germany where I'm staying right now. And everybody is asking me, what are you doing in Germany? And now I'm asking myself the same question because I can't find a job over here without knowing fluent German. And I'm so frustrated. So I don't know if I want to be a student, but I was wondering if there are some like leads on sponsorship, like or something like family reunification or something. I don't know. But people talk about it, but I remember sending my application and everything to the Canadian Council and sent everything back to me. And then I didn't try again, which was so ridiculous. And I was like, all my relatives live in Canada. Nobody lives where I'm at, I was in the US at that time. So I was just trying to get closer there, So I have a son, he's very young and I wanted him to know his family, I didn't want him to be cut off from his relatives completely. So can you shed some light on that? Sorry.
Yeah, no, for sure. So family sponsorship is very particular, right? I can sponsor my husband, for example, right? But when it comes to extended family, the criteria is very narrow. Like say, for instance, you have an aunt there, that aunt has to have no dependents, so no children or anything like that, to even be considered, right? Even if you have a sibling in Canada, that sibling has to have no dependents in order to sponsor you to come. So family sponsorship is very particular. So
I have a son actually over there, and he is not married and he doesn't have any children. Can he sponsor me?
How old is he?
He's 40.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll have to look into that for some more, but I think so. For families, if he has no dependents and then his financial situation is good, that he can prove that he can, because when you sponsor somebody, he's just financially responsible for you for like 3 years, unless they change that. He has to show like he has financial backing, he can afford to have you there. Even if you can you can financially afford yourself, he has to show that he can have you as a dependent and you don't fall into welfare or anything like that and be a burden to the Canadian system, right? So that's something you can look into. If you have a son there, he has no dependents, that's definitely something you can look into. Alternatively,
if I were to go there, like if he does agree to sponsor me, I'm not sure if he will or if he won't, but if he does agree, like I could still find work for myself. I'm still eligible to find work over there, right? It's not like I'm just going to go there and be dependent on him. I can work, right?
Of course. So there's this program called Parent and Grandparent Sponsorship, right? And it's specifically for children who want to sponsor their parents or grandparents. So like me, if I want to sponsor my parents to come to Canada. The thing with that program is that it is a lottery system.
I know. I don't like lottery system.
Me neither.
I think I put myself up for that and nothing ever happened with it.
Same. I've submitted the information for my parents to try and sponsor them, and I didn't make the cut. So that's the only thing with the family sponsorship specific to your son sponsoring you to come to Canada as a permanent resident. The lottery system, for everybody's information, is like, so they say, okay, this year we're going to allow 10,000 applicants, right? So 10,000 parent and grandparent sponsorship applications. The window to apply is between October 1st and October the 4th or something silly, right? So a small window. And as it opens, I remember the first time they did it, it opened in 11 minutes. The cap was met and the program was closed. Right, so the 10,000 thing was done. Like we got, our cap is filled. And then after 11 minutes, the system crashed. Right. So that lottery thing, like people are serious. People are ready to go. They have their finger on the mouse, ready to go. Click it up. Right. So it's not necessarily the easiest. And for this year, it went over my head. Like I didn't even realize it was open. It opened and closed. And I'm like, oh, I guess I missed it next year. Right. So that's the thing with your son. Alternatively, I mean, if you are a working professional already, you can try express entry, try to see how much points you have. Like the calculation on online is free. You can go to comprehensive ranking tool, calculate the points. If you don't meet the cut, it's a little bit tricky. I mean, you can go and, on a visa and kind of just be there for a little while until the next parent and sponsorship thing. But if you want to work, that's where it becomes challenging, of course, unless you have like a remote job in another country. So
let me quickly comment on it, Kristina.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate your input.
The thing is that if the idea is that you use the sponsorship just to get there, but then you want to work, then the question is, does it have to be so complicated? Because if this is the idea, then it means you believe you will be able to get yourself a job. So then the question is, it may be not that difficult to just get the job and the permission to live in Canada with that. Maybe just as a work visa in the beginning, but then you have the foot in the door and can figure out the rest on site. So don't necessarily go for the most intuitive option. Sometimes, one that you haven't considered may be better than you think, because it's basically not really off from what you actually want to do. So if you want to go to Canada and you want to work there, then I think it should always be considered to focus on this option, not as a loan, but by itself.
Primarily.
And then the others primarily, or at least maybe not even primarily, but you shouldn't be forgotten, because you are so focused on one other option and then it has to work, and then you just depend on the lottery in the end. Whereas, a simple job application with the right company would fix the problem within a couple of months. So just because an option is available to you and you say, oh, my son is the right age and everything is fine, and others don't have this option, does not mean this is the best option for you. One of the common options may be better than the special one that is available to you. So make sure that you make a good decision that's not based on intuition, but on knowledge. Knowledge about the situation. Yes.
And also, like, since you're remotely in Germany already, if you go to a part of Canada that maybe your son isn't there for maybe another year or two, like Atlantic Canada, and just do your sentence, and then you can move closer to where your son is. So like Michael said, there's many options, and there's, like I said, there's no one size fits all Canadian immigration program.
Right, I know. It's very, it seems like when you look at it, it seems like, oh, it's so easy. But then there's all these nuances in it, that make it very difficult. And the lottery thing is, I don't even want to think about it anymore. I
gave up.
We've tried that a few times already, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, well, consider the Atlantic Immigration Program, right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Sama has a question.
Yeah, I had something to say.
Hi again. Sorry to bother you. A couple of questions.
Yeah.
So I am a single father and my kids are with me. My ex moved to Canada a few months back and she is applying for her PR. Now she asked me if she can take the kids. We are still negotiating to reach an agreement, because I don't want to fall into a surprise. Anyway, the question is, if she takes the kids, will this help me to move to Canada? This is the first thing. And the second thing, because you were mentioning about colleges, is there anything you can suggest regarding reasonable colleges for masters? Thank you.
No problem. Masters, credential, what is it? Is it a credential? Master's program in general. Master's degree is usually awarded by a university. like at the college level, they're probably going to give you like a postgraduate certificate, one up from that, but I'm not sure that you're going to get like a master's degree from a university, a college. A university is going to be doing that, but you can do a postgraduate certificate at a Canadian college, and it's going to be a little bit more cost effective than going to a university to pursue master's studies. You can start there and then pursue master's studies after you've gotten citizen or like landing residency in Canada, so it's cheaper. But college, postgraduate certificate, university, master's.
Okay.
There's a lot. It kind of depends on where your family is, where your kids are going to be. I know a few colleges in Canada. There's Humber College, there's Centennial College, there's Seneca College. So this is information that I think it's scattered somewhere. It's somewhere on my website, but also it's in my book. A list of schools that I know that I can recommend in Toronto. So that's one. Your kids being in Canada, the kids sound like kids that are minors. Does it help you? Maybe it depends on the program that you're going through with. I forget. I think you didn't mention your age, and you were 50 thereabout.
Yes.
And so it all depends on the program that you are going to pursue. That would be beneficial. For express entry, you get points for having family members in Canada, right? And that's really the only time it really matters. It's not like a whole lot of points either, probably 30 points maybe. And points are points though, like don't get me wrong, like once you have points. But if you're pursuing like school in Canada, that's definitely gonna help you more than necessarily having family members in Canada. And if they're relatively young, it will be a while before they can even consider sponsoring you through the parents and grandparent sponsorship. So, but if you do the Atlantic immigration program, it's not tied to where your kids are, or if they can help you. You go, you work, you do your thing, you move closer to where your family is once you're a permanent resident.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No problem. All right. Bye, Leila. Good luck in your situation.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, no problem.
Okay. So we've answered. I don't know if have you gone through the whole chat already? I
did. Well, once I started to go up further, there was a lot of questions that I think had already been covered based on what we said. That question came before, so I'm not going to necessarily bring them back up. I would like to know what's the percentage of income taxes. So it depends on your how much you make. There are tax brackets in Canada. So if you make up to like about $46,000 a year, you get 15% taxed. If you move up if you get a raise, you're taxed more. So you move up into like a 20% bracket, and it goes all the way to about 33%, depending on how much you earn. I don't know if that person is still here, but that was Beatrice. Okay, just down the bottom here. Thank you. No problem, Veronica. Yeah, I think we covered all the questions here and all the things that we wanted to say. Yeah. Yes, so I mean, it's been 2.5 hours already, so I think it's time to wrap up. Is there anything you would like to address, Kristina, still? I don't want to cut you short. Oh, Ina wants to say something. All right, Ina. Go on then. Oh, you've unmuted, but we can't hear you. I don't think your mic is working, Ina. Well, then quickly, Joella, jump in.
Hi, I have written the question in the chat, but I'm just curious if does Canada accept immigration from all countries, or are there like specific bans, like they don't accept immigration status from certain specific countries, or are they open to all immigration? Just curious.
As far as I know, it's open to people from any country. That there's no country that is red listed or blacklisted in terms of immigration. And and again, things, no worries. Yes, we realize your mic's not working. It's more based on an individual's profile, professionally, educationally, and age-wise than it is from the country that you're from. Of course, there are some countries that don't have a Canadian consulate or a Canadian representative in that country. And so to do certain things, you might have to go to another, like I know that the Bahamas doesn't have a Canadian consulate. So people in the Bahamas have to go to Jamaica or Barbados or somewhere else or Florida rather, to connect with the immigration consulate there. So I think that's the only thing that may be like a little bit of a hurdle, but it's not that you are ineligible because you're from a certain country. I don't know that to be true.
Joella?
Okay, thank you. And I just have one more brief question. I know you speak about Toronto. I actually have family in Canada, in Toronto, but if you're interested in, like say, Vancouver or another Providence, or do you, is there information where that can be found? Like if you're interested in going to another area of Canada.
So the information I provide, I think, is general and applicable no matter where you go. I think I do reference maybe Toronto-based schools. Because I haven't had my experience in Vancouver, I didn't bring that in. But I think generally across the internet is where you can find schools in particular to British Columbia, Vancouver. But in terms of the process, depending on which process you're choosing, it's applicable regardless of where you're trying to go necessarily. So the process of choosing a school, the process of choosing a program, and then going through the motions applying is general information.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay, so now we'll wrap it up. Kristina, is there anything you want to add?
I think at the end of my things, I usually say like what specific words that can help you in taking from here to move on. It's one, if you're interested in coming to Canada, you want to move to Canada, you have to be humble and patient, especially when you get here, right? When you're doing the research, you have to be patient. But when you get here, being humble is helpful because you don't know if you're going to be starting over. And starting over is a huge pill to swallow, depending on where you are at in life. And just a little bit of humility will help you to kind of just go through that and progress upwards. It is possible, even if it seems far-fetched or it seems like a lot of information right now, kind of just narrowing down the search as to like what program are you truly eligible for based on your age, based on how much money you have in the bank, based on what you're willing to do. And then kind of just pursuing a program that is specific to the criteria that you meet, right? I'll say it again, the Atlantic Immigration Program. You come here, you get a job, you work, you do your thing. And I'm about to test it with a beta student of mine just to see and go to Atlantic Canada for you to get the lay of the land. So, could follow me on social media, on whatever it is, Instagram and on YouTube and on my website to keep in touch with me to find out what's coming next and what do I have planned to help you guys to understand and make a decision for yourself, right? And Michael has an amazing resources that you will need when you are preparing a resume to try to get a job in Canada, right? To get information on how to go about the job search, how to show up for your interview, all of that stuff. I think Michael is an expert at that. So both of us together, I think, are a perfect combo for find a job. I'll help you to figure out how to find it, and Michael will help you to figure out how to get it. Right.
Yes. Ina has posted her question finally, so I think we have to answer this, and it's an easy one, I think, for you. Can you lose the citizenship if you are out of the country for too long? I think you addressed it earlier, but just to be sure.
I don't think I addressed it specifically. No, citizenship is something that unless you can't necessarily just lose it like that because you've been out of the country for too long. I think if you're out of the country for too long, there are implications like your tax benefits, access to healthcare, mostly health and tax benefits that get a little bit tricky depending on how long you are outside of the country for, but you don't lose your citizenship. You can lose your permanent residency, right? Permanent residency is something that you have for 5 years. Within the 5 years, you need to show them that you have been physically present in Canada for the amount of time that they require for you to be reconsidered for permanent residency. And if you don't show that, you have to show some other reason to justify why you should continue to be a permanent resident of Canada. That's why I like citizenship. It's more, it's more like, it's solid. It's a passport. They can't take my passport. Nah.
Okay, great. So now, no questions, no further questions allowed for today. We will send you the messages and with all the links and all the stuff in the next few days. Kristina, thank you very, very much for this exciting and very detailed and knowledgeable session. And so thank you for taking the time. I've enjoyed it a lot working with you, as always, and I hope we have managed to help the projects of the audience move ahead. And so wish wherever you are in the world, I wish you a very nice night and day and morning. And I hope to see you again here very soon.
Yes,
okay.
And thank you for having me, everybody, and thank you for showing up and staying through. Wesley, he was here first and he's here to the end.
Yes. Okay, great. Okay, thanks a lot, Kristina. It was great you had the time. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank you very much. Very, very informative. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye.